What's up, Stats fans? Welcome back to Swan Signal Live. Here with my friends Steven, John, and Brandon. What's going on, Steven? How's it going today, man?
What's happening, guys? Another exciting day at the start of an Apocal bull run.
Indeed, John, Haar. Happy Friday.
What's up, everyone? I feel like I missed an opportunity here. It's like 70 degrees in New York, and this is probably one of my last chances to wear a tank top today. Steven gets that luxury all year round, but I'm kind of missing my opportunities here. Maybe next week.
I had to iron this tank top before the podcast.
You ironed your tank top?
Yeah, like no one has ever ironed a tank top ever. It was just so wrinkly, and I'm like, this is ridiculous. But you know what? This is America, and we're so back.
And this show is very important. Like, that's dressing up for Steven, is ironing his tank top. Brandon Quitten, what's going on, buddy?
Well, I'm from the North Country, and winter starts after Labor Day here, so I'm fully clothed up with a sweatshirt. There's no sleeve monsters here; they're all in Florida.
Yeah, that's true. Okay, I check out this cover art that we have for the show today. I think Brandon looks like he's mewing there, doesn't he? Like, you just gotta. Can you do it, Brandon? You gotta do the thing.
My God. He's got the mastic gum and everything.
He's got the mastic gum. Brandon
works hard.
I think you went into mute, Brandon.
Chiseled jawline.
Yeah, I've got my mastic gum right here. Looks maxing. Here we go.
Right,
America chiseled again.
Got to look good for all his girlfriends.
You sent me that message today, which I stole and put on Twitter. But I got a text from Brandon. He got a text from somebody that was like, "We're really seeing a tale of two Americas right now. Everyone in the cardio room looks miserable. Everyone in the weight room looks euphoric." And this is where we are, folks.
What about both? I'm independent. I go on both sides. Get some cardio, get some weights.
It's true. If you lift weights, you become a conservative.
They spent a long time running this messaging. I'm honestly shocked it didn't pan out for them. I mean, who could have saw that coming?
All you needed was to get Kamala like starting to do some bench presses and squats, while she gave interviews. She may have had a chance.
It's true. Are there any Jack Democrats?
I mean, RFK was a Democrat.
Was, yeah. Thank you for proving my point.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I meant. We got lots to talk about today. Look, we're at $77,000, $77,013 on my ticker up here on the top of my laptop. So that's an all-time high, right? I think we're really close to it.
An all-time high? No, new all-time high moments ago. I mean, this
all-time high.
We just keep winning.
It's gonna be a lot of winning for Bitcoiners.
Yeah, we're above 77 right now.
We're in new high November right now.
Yeah.
To be followed by new high December, which then is followed by new high January.
There's a trend here.
Just keeps going.
Yeah.
All right. I mean, look, let's talk a little bit of SuperCycle. This is I got to admit, I cringe a little bit when I hear someone say SuperCycle.
Yeah.
Part of that is because I was one of those people at the beginning of a previous bull cycle in 2021. And I was talking about HODL FOMO. That was my SuperCycle, name, that branding for it, where everyone's going to realize that this is an asset that you hold for the long term, use it as collateral, use it for your treasury, etc. And they're going to get FOMO to HODL. So maybe that actually comes around this cycle. It's got to happen at some point. It's sort of like the gold bugs saying, and the Austrians saying, this is going to be the crack up boom. Nope, this time. No, this time. And they keep kicking the can down the road. And that's, at some point going to happen with Bitcoin. It's just going to break through. So let's take a look at a target here from David Bailey, and props to David Bailey for his work in the political arena this year. Huge success in the end. So he calls for $850,000 per Bitcoin, which is Bitcoin gold parity, for the target of this bull cycle. Then Tur de Meester, who I respect very much in terms of his analysis and price calls. He tends to be pretty moderate. He's not like overly bullish, I guess I should say. agrees, looking at an 800K target. I think that qualifies as a super cycle. What do you guys think?
Yeah, so I think like price target aside, the concept of just is gold parity, whatever that number might be, is that possible this cycle? I think it's more possible than it's ever been. I mean, I think what we're dealing with is you can't overestimate between the spot ETFs and a now not only friendly White House, but a friendly Congress, pro Bitcoin politicians, the regulation question, just completely the risk, just completely out the window. I mean, it is a fundamental change to the landscape because I think the number one thing holding back most of the money is this fear of like Bitcoin is this antagonistic asset that the government's going to hate and they're going to, like punish. And I think that's kept so much money on the sidelines. That is removed. The career risk is removed. We talked about this last time. Like, you can't get laughed out of the room anymore. If you go to your tech company, you go to your fund, you say, hey guys, I think we should have a Bitcoin position. Like, maybe they don't take it. Maybe you're not successful at convincing them, but it's not like de facto laughable. It's not like you said, hey, what if we put a bubble gum on the balance sheet, right? And that's how people did see it. So I really do think you can't underestimate how much things have changed. And so, I mean, do we get there? Do we not get there? Is it 800 gold parity? Who knows? But is it substantially higher than here? I think yes. And do I think this bull market ends in like a year or something? No, I think it goes substantially longer. I think there's been a fundamental re-rating of the asset, which will happen.
What do you think about 800K? So gold parity is reasonable in your minds here. I'll say, like, if the U.S. adopts it as a reserve asset, right, it really does put it on par with gold because there's no other hard money asset that we are holding at scale by the U.S. government. So let's say the
Lummis bill gets passed. Let's say the Lummis bill gets passed. I think that's a no-brainer, right? If the U.S. actually starts buying Bitcoin, I mean, everything changes. Does that happen? Does that not happen? I don't know. I would frame it like this. Prior to the last few weeks, I would have put the odds at Bitcoin hitting gold parity this cycle at like sub 1%, like, really low. I think it'd be reasonable to think it's a double-digit percentage now. Like, that's how much it's changed. Do we get it? Is it 10%? Is it 30%? Is it 70%? I don't really know. There's not enough information at this time. But I do think the chance of it just went up over 10x.
Nice. John, what do you think about this super cycle price target, parity with gold by the end of the bull?
Yeah, I think I have a little bit of PTSD as well, Brady, from 2021. Lots of people talking about the super cycle. The institutions are here. They're going to provide a floor for the price. And I think those calls were a little early. And then, I think that's number one. But one other bullish thing, in addition to everything you guys said about regulatory clarity, nation state adoption, I think there's actually a big benefit to what we saw playing out in 2022, like all the crypto scam nonsense. And I'm not saying there's never going to be any crypto scamming in the future. You always have to look out for that. But like the whole FTX, Celsius, BlockFi, Voyager, like them all blowing up in spectacular fashion, it's actually very good to have that in the past now.
Yeah.
And we already went through that phase of SBF being basically Bernie Madoff, like, similar magnitude, and TradFi people, my former colleagues, being like, oh, this Bitcoin thing is dead again. Whether we're in a super cycle, like what that means for prices, that there's a lot of debate there. But I think we may have passed the point where the mainstream it may never be a mainstream view again to say, oh, Bitcoin is dead. There might be 50% drops because if you run up quickly, or even 70% drops, if you run up to a massive number, you could have a 50 to 70% drop. So when I think super cycle, I'm not necessarily saying no more 50 to 70% drops, because if we run up to 300, 400K quickly, like that could fall more than 50%. That wouldn't shock me. But I think what we might not see anymore is this idea of like, oh, Bitcoin's officially dead. and it's just like a brutal bear market and you have to be a true believer to stay in it, those types of environments might be in the past.
Just a note there real quick. I think there's a massive difference between a 50% drop and an 80% drop. Those are completely different things in my book. And yeah, anyways.
Yeah, I do say, Brandon, let's go to Brandon while his camera's like propped up properly.
Yeah, I'm having some light difficulties here. I'd like to pick apart the will we hit gold's parity. I'm very bullish, by the way. I don't disagree with what I heard. I think 10x chance of a super cycle is probably the right magnitude of what just happened. But in my opinion, we're going through a monetary transition globally here over the next, let's say, decade. And I do not think Bitcoin passes gold's market cap until gold is ruled out as the potential next reserve currency. Right? We still see countries accumulating gold. I think there's still a reasonable chance that we try some new gold standard 2.0 thing. I think ultimately it fails. Maybe it never will get implemented, but I think the market needs to digest that as something behind us before we can crown Bitcoin as the victor or the next likely victor. And when that happens, I think gold will be in the rearview mirror for essentially forever.
So here's the interest. I agree with you. And I think prior to the last few weeks, my base case was like they do something with gold first. Like that is like conditionally just what will happen first. There's an interesting thing though. To the extent that like Peter Thiel is now running the US government, right? Like to the extent to which Peter Thiel backed political factions, Vance obviously like, you know, intimately part of that, to the extent to which that faction has gotten control, I think you start upping your probabilities of like this move directly to Bitcoin. Like I'm actually like very skeptical that you ever see like the dollar's not going anywhere anytime soon. That's not the call I'm making, but some implementation of Bitcoin as something strategic. I mean, strategic reserve, right? Whatever it is, the US holds it. Central banks maybe hold it. It becomes normalized. I do think like gun to my head, the more power that this sort of faction gets, the better those odds get. And like time will tell how much power like these guys have actually suddenly got in, but I would bet it's a substantial amount.
And I'll just say on the gold stuff, like the way I look at, I don't think gold is necessarily going anywhere. Like, you know, if someone told me they own 5% of their portfolio in gold, 10%, I wouldn't be like, hey, you got to get rid of that. I think gold's going to be around for a long time. I think, like Quitten was saying, it probably will get ruled out as being like the next global reserve asset. So I don't think it's necessarily going away, but I think it'll get ruled out. And when I just think of like what would have to happen for it to be ruled back in?
Yes.
You know, gold has already failed as a monetary asset. Like there's no putting that genie back in the bottle. What are these countries going to do? Like they run up kind of tabs with each other, right? And it's like, you owe me some gold, you owe me some gold. You like this story already happened. Like you can't just like send it across an ocean quickly. There's going to be these central clearinghouses. Some country's going to have more ability to control that than another one. You don't really solve it. Like it ends up not becoming a neutral reserve asset. It can play a role, but like it doesn't actually become a neutral reserve asset. Like if China holds some gold for you, but like you run up balances so that some of that gold is allocated to you because you engaged in some trade, like you can't settle that balance immediately. So you're going to have to be like, hey, London is holding gold for all these different countries, and like that already failed. So I don't see it ever coming back. But again, I'm not saying sell your gold is going to zero, but it's not going to be this neutral reserve asset that replaces treasuries.
I think that's probably right. I think the market still believes that gold is the uncertainty hedge in a future monetary world that we don't know. I think until that's clear what that next future is, gold remains valuable, and I think higher than Bitcoin.
I agree with you. I think that's right. That's definitely still the perception today, no question about it. Bitcoin hasn't gotten there yet. but can it get there over this next period of time? That's what's interesting. That's the interesting question. And,
Agree.
we're going to see it play out. But I also think like you can't overstate Bitcoiners just got so much closer to political power. Like we were way out here before. And as the result of all these elections, the fundraising, the money that went in, the Senate races, the presidency, like this industry and the people in it like now have the ear of power. It's very interesting. And I think we are looking at, like, broadly speaking, like I think this is worth understanding, not just from a political standpoint, but from a Bitcoin standpoint. The faction that just got elected, the faction that just came into power in the US, is fundamentally like a more revolutionary right-wing faction than what happened in 2016. With 2016 was kind of a, screw the system, vote out, these people. What you saw this time is this more right-wing elite capture Silicon Valley financiers, like intellectuals on the internet. You saw this kind of much more fundamentally like revolutionary right-wing faction got in, and like depending on the degree of success that they have and kind of pushing some things forward, like these timelines could change dramatically. Because it's like generally this faction, you can go across all the blogs and all the writing in this kind of sphere of people, and they've been into Bitcoin the whole time. They've been into Bitcoin for a long time. They own Bitcoin, they hold Bitcoin, and the idea that these figures in particular would like go to gold rather than just bring in Bitcoin. And it's also just that like people who have already gotten rich from Bitcoin have influenced this outcome particularly. And now those people are going to get more rich. There's a really interesting cycle here.
And I mean, the coalition was interesting. Yeah, the Republicans definitely picked off some elites, obviously some big names, but this was, again, a working class driven coalition, in my opinion. And the Democrats messed up by focusing too much on social issues, which deserve attention, but I think that hand was way overplayed, and instead should have focused a lot more on the economy, for instance, and just more practical and pragmatic things, and mixing them in. I think by highlighting these social issues so extremely, you're alienating a lot of that working class. And now the Democratic Party has given up that demographic,
yes,
in large part to the Republicans. So there's been a swing, started with the first Trump campaign, and I think probably, I haven't looked at any exit polling on this, but probably even stronger with that demographic this time around.
I've seen the data for this. You're completely right. I've seen the data, and it's wild. Basically, the Republican Party this election was like the Democrats in the 90s. They won big in the working class coalitions. The only people they lost were the very wealthy and the very educated. And that's flipped, because that was the Republican Party in the 90s. In the 90s, the Republican Party was like the big corporate wealthy people, and the Democrats were like the working class coalition. It just completely 180 inverted.
Yeah, the pendulum swings, and you'll see after a sweep like that, I imagine you'll see a lot of change in the Democratic Party, and rightfully so, and how they're speaking and prioritizing issues.
Yeah, my take here, 2016, Trump did not expect to win. He was caught off guard. He did not have his ducks in a row. He did not know what he was walking into, and he was okay, but largely ineffective on his ambition. And I think COVID mostly and related things that came out of that essentially radicalized a large portion of the United States, whether it's inflation, whether it's censorship, whether it's medical tyranny, various forms of authoritarianism, essentially said, hey, those with principles and courage on the left, like RFK, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, they decided to reject their own party and, again, at great personal cost, change their political views. And I think that's just a symptom of the exact same thing happening with the working class, which is that they feel talked down to, their issues are not taken seriously, and Trump gives them a voice. And I will add, exactly in the same way that Bernie Sanders gave that group a voice in 2016 before the DNC snubbed him, right? And so my takeaway here is essentially connecting to you, Brady, is the Democratic Party is in absolute shambles, and they do need to rebuild and figure out what their future is. Does it shatter into a bunch of small cohorts? Do they find a more moderate repositioning? I don't know the answer to that, but if I look ahead 4 years and I'm being honest for the good of America, we do want a strong opposition to every party, right?
It's similar to the first Obama victory. There was a sweep at both houses, and the Republicans went soul searching and figured things out. This is how it works, and you figure out where Americans are in elections like this, especially presidential elections, and then you reprioritize things. Let's take a look at. Oh, sorry, you want to finish up?
No, you finish up, Brady.
Oh, I was done. I was just gonna change to.
Okay. Yeah, just one final comment on this topic. We've made the point that this is different than 2016. It's also different than an alternative universe where Trump was in office in 2020. Because think about all these people that we're talking about here: RFK, JD Vance. Vance probably would have been still associated with the GOP, but maybe not as directly involved. Vivek, Tulsi, Elon buying Twitter. If Trump gets in office in 2020 and then Pence is his VP, things just play out completely differently. Maybe he doesn't even embrace Bitcoin as much because there was no need for him to do it. Elon maybe never buys Twitter. RFK never gets involved. Vivek again probably would have been involved with the GOP to a certain extent, but this particular team of people, I think it's fair to say, would never have been all together had Trump become president in 2020. So, the people who voted for Trump, I know there's a lot of people out there who just held their nose and voted for Trump because of the people around him. That is a completely different situation we have today versus had Trump and Pence won again in 2020. So I think that's just worth noting.
Absolutely.
And what we're all going to be watching for is if this administration makes good on its promises. Freeing Ross day one. Maybe it doesn't happen day one, but I think I saw Ross's mother, Lynn, tweet that Ross is coming home in January. So that I wonder if she has any confirmation. If I were her, I definitely want to seek some confirmation. Hey, is this actually going to happen?
It'll be crazy to get him on Swan Signal live when he's out.
It's going to be interesting what happens when Ross is out, what he does, and he can do pretty much anything he wants in this industry if he wants to do it. I have a feeling that he's going to get a lot of Bitcoin from Bitcoiners so that he doesn't have to worry about that for a little while. Let's see. Okay, so let's talk about, speaking of the keeping promises. This is the biggest one, the Bitcoin Strategic Reserve. And Lummis, of course, introduced that bill after Trump spoke at Nashville, and she's out there pushing it again. This is, Scaramucci here is right that this obviously would be monumental. It sparks a race to the game theory is on at that point for other central banks to do the same. So this is a huge one, guys, and let's just examine it a little bit further. What does this really mean? What happens next after, if this happens? What would it need to look like, I think, to have the sort of impact that we hope? Is there a certain amount of Bitcoin? Does it just have to be a little bit? We already have 210,000. Trump has said we're going to keep those as the beginning of the strategic reserve. I think he would need to add to it for it to have, the kind of impact we hope it would have.
Yeah. So obviously the version where they buy more in some sort of cadence is much more powerful. That's for sure. That's going to be the harder one to get across, but certainly doable given the way that the races have shaken out. But even if he just does the one where they hold the coins, right? They take the Silk Road coins, the Mr. X coins, and they hold them. I think it just has profound knock-on effects. It's not about that thing itself. It's not about just like, oh, that reserve, right? Because on the margin, that's just like, okay, 200,000 coins of sell pressure is taken off the market. Fine, whatever. That's good, but it's not great. The U.S. doing it, I think, just opens up. I mean, the U.S. is the most important country in the world, and certainly the most important in finance, in the financial world. And I think you just start to see other countries enter. You start to see companies enter. You start to see individuals, the wealthy. Like, it's a blessing. I mean, the U.S. doing that is a blessing, that Bitcoin is a legitimate financial asset, that it has value. It has sufficient value that the U.S. is holding it. And it's such a ringing endorsement. So even if we only get that, I think it's super material, and I think the odds look good on that right now, from some conversations I've been having. But if you get the Lummis bill and you get some sort of like accumulation, I think it's hard to even estimate the impact that could have. That's
El Salvador is buying 1 Bitcoin a day, I think.
Yeah.
It would be incredible for the policy of the United States to be, we're going to buy X amount of Bitcoin every day or every week, and put it out there. That would probably be a smart way to do it, so that it can get priced in by the market, and you're not going to drive the price up. I mean, if you buy a huge lump sum, that would be, that would be bonkers. The Omega candle, maybe triple Omega candle, if that happened. So yeah, I mean, how would you do it, John, if you were Treasury Secretary? How would you go about planning Bitcoin buys for the United States?
I mean, if the real way to do it is like you don't tell people ahead of time, like this is an investment, right? Like this is investing 101. Like you don't start talking your book until your position is already on.
Yeah.
Maybe in this case, you could argue that it's so early that it'll still be beneficial, but and they have 200,000 Bitcoin already, so they're not starting from zero. But ideally, you do it without telegraphing it, and you build your position way bigger, and then maybe you say hey, we're building a Bitcoin stockpile. Maybe you don't even say how much is in there. Now that's countered by these are government. The people don't really like the government operating in total stealth mode, and you don't want them just doing things without knowing what they're doing at all. So there's some balance here. So, but we'll see. But another comment on the strategic Bitcoin reserve, Stephen was saying before how all of these supportive things that have happened for Bitcoin, it's near zero chance that someone is going to be laughed out of the room anymore when they suggest Bitcoin. If the strategic Bitcoin reserve and a building strategic Bitcoin reserve for the US becomes a reality, now it's going to be people asking the question, why do we own zero Bitcoin? Our own government is adding to a strategic Bitcoin reserve. How do we not own any of this? So it'll flip to that.
The career risk is now not owning Bitcoin.
Yeah.
I just had a thought. I could see Trump saying we have 210,000 Bitcoin, and then looking at Saylor's stack and being we can't let that guy have more Bitcoin than the United States.
We've got the biggest stack of Bitcoin. People tell me no one's got a bigger stack than ours.
You guys know all the AI generated Bitcoin pictures that Saylor posts pretty much every day. Just imagine Trump doing the exact same thing, he and Saylor posting rockets of them as an astronaut with Bitcoin.
Yeah. I mean, go ahead, Stephen.
And that's the thing to think about all of this. It's not about the impact of someone buying X Bitcoin per day or per year or anything. It's if the US buys 50,000 Bitcoin a year, the impact of that 50,000 Bitcoin a year will be 100 times greater than if some private company bought 50,000 Bitcoin a year, right? Let's be really clear. It sends a completely different signal.
For sure.
I think we have a good case study here with the likes of Norway, right? They set up a sovereign wealth fund because they just so happen to have a bunch of oil offshore. And now they have almost $2 trillion in this thing. And how many people are in Norway? 500 or something like that. So that's a lot of wealth per person over there. And what else is interesting with Norway is they're printing money from oil, and they also have taken steps to invest that money into other energy assets and diversify. So they essentially have a lot of money and they're managing it forever. Howard Lutnick went on Pomp's show, CEO of Cantor, on the transition team, part of the Doge group, Department of Governmental Efficiency. And he was making all these claims on how they're going to monetize land resources that the federal government owns and all these other various forms of essentially unlocking parts of our natural resources, collecting that money into a sovereign wealth fund. So to me, that's the key that America should think about here is Bitcoin's part of a portfolio that Americans manage. And we use that for maybe bailing out Social Security or pensions or future strategic investments or whatever it is. And I'd like to see a sats per citizen type target, right? We want to get up to, I don't know the number, 100,000 sats per citizen or something like that. And that's our target allocation.
Your vision is we go from Social Security to social cybersecurity.
That's right.
What's the number? If we had, if you divide the number of sats by the number of people in the world, I think the number is like 217,000 sats per person. Is that right? Or am I...
Yeah, it's ridiculous.
Am I off by 10?
I don't know the exact number, but it's...
I think that's right. I'll have to look it up. But yeah, I mean, you have to have at least that much.
Let's see.
It's 2.1 quadrillion sats divided by, where are we, 8 billion, 8.5 billion now?
Yeah, it's about 240,000 per human on Earth.
240.
Roughly.
ChatGPT is at 262,500 Satoshis is what I'm getting.
There you go.
Which is, let's do the math. Something like $91 per person.
Yeah.
Current prices. So 91 times a little over 300 million people in the US would be what you're looking at.
3 million or so.
Yeah. Something like, I mean, you could do it something like $30 billion, like maybe a little bit more, which is kind of pennies for the United States if you wanted to do something like that.
We spent more in our national debt went up more than that since we started this conversation.
Absolutely.
Oh, hell yeah. Way more.
And hey, just like there's a lot of talk of like this helping our debt situation, the strategic Bitcoin reserve. It definitely does help, but like, let's just do the quick back of the envelope math here. Bitcoin's a $1.5 trillion asset class today. Let's say the US accumulates 10% of that. So now you're talking they've got 150 billion, right? And then Bitcoin has to 10x from whatever level it's at. Now they've got an asset that's worth 1.5 trillion.
Yeah.
Like we still have a $35 trillion debt. And that's with them accumulating a lot and Bitcoin going 10x. So like I'm still in the camp of it definitely helps, right? For sure. But if you really want to solve the debt problem, you have to stop adding to it. Just getting an appreciating asset like Bitcoin is a small part of the solution.
No question. Yeah, that's where the Elon coming in with a paintball gun like Ari Gold.
Great scene. Yeah. It's like
shout out to the millennial bros who watched Entourage.
Yeah. He just literally comes to the office, shoots a bunch of people and says you're fired. David Zell, this is kind of small, Bitcoin Policy Institute. Steven, you want to kind of summarize Zell's take here?
Yeah, so this kind of tweet made the rounds yesterday. David Zell leads the Bitcoin Policy Institute. We've worked with them at Swan. I know these guys. They're all awesome. A lot of the academics that came into your Troy Cross, Craig, Andrew Bailey, some of Matt Pines, all these people were kind of associated with BPI in 21 or 22 or whenever those guys came in. But basically this tweet made the rounds. And so they've been very involved in some of these conversations. And, David's saying he's feeling really good about the chance of a strategic Bitcoin reserve. And, I had the chance to talk with him. We talked last night and, he asked me to keep some things private. So I'm going to respect that. But, just going off the tweet, I can say they're confident. These guys are confident. They're in conversations and they're confident. It's not a done deal, But it looks like this is something we see. It could be as soon as day one. So I think there's reason to be optimistic that the reserve is a real thing.
Should we chat about? I think it's worth talking about David Zell's his analogy to the internet. I love these things. It just like puts Bitcoin in more of a historical context. So I'll just read like a couple. He followed up his tweet with I'll read a couple things here. He goes, in a way, we've done this before with the internet itself. Remember that until 1991, commerce on the internet was illegal. Lawmakers were concerned that the open exchange of information would facilitate money laundering, terrorism, scams, and use up lots of energy. Does that sound familiar to anyone? And then he goes on, the proliferation of the internet was a deliberate policy choice by the United States. We got rid of bad laws, passed good ones, and poured tens of billions of dollars into internet research, development, and access. He says more there, but that's kind of the core of it. And like I said, I love the historical analogies. It just helps people grasp, like, this has been done before in other industries. And it's also just like a, optimistic message. It's not like a doomer thing of like, hey, the government's going to screw us all. Like sometimes we actually do get things right and pass good legislation.
Yeah. It's a perfect analogy. I actually use that one all the time. And another one that the concerns was that it was going to demolish small businesses like retail. But things, there's still, like in my town, there's still plenty of small businesses, small retail businesses, little shops, boutiques, etc. And they're all over the place still. Amazon's a Goliath, but there's still plenty of those small mom and pop shops out there. So I think, things change. Like technology changes things, but everybody adapts, and it's the doom and gloom predictions about technology almost never come to fruition, right?
Absolutely.
So
we are making new all-time highs as we speak, by the way. We're above 77. I think we hit 77.3. So
let's go.
A good time.
77.3. I mean, 80 maybe before the end of the weekend. Who knows? It'd be cool to see a new digit in front there.
What if we just get an all-time high every Friday for the show, and we can just celebrate like that each week?
That's a good idea. Let's dial it up.
The all-time high show.
Who knew that 80K by New Year's Day? It sounds incredibly bearish right now.
So
yeah, it does.
Incredibly. Get out of here.
I saw another call for 150K. A doubling from here to the end of the year.
I think Tom Lee said that from FundStrat.
Yeah, pull up that Macroscope tweet or that Tom Lee if we've got it. There's something on this.
Not on the ETFs. What do we have? Abe? Fed Rate, Tad Smith. I don't think we put it in.
Oh, we didn't put it. Okay, that's fine. Well, here, wait. I've got it right here.
You can pull it up. You can screen share if you want.
Yeah. Tom Lee was on TV today. He basically said, it's becoming clear that within Trump's campaign, there is a discussion about revaluing Bitcoin radically higher and positioning it as an important part of U.S. financial stability if he wins in November. It's going to be very difficult to fix the deficit with just changes in tax and spending, but that's probably why Bitcoin is kind of interesting here, because it's potentially a treasury reserve asset. And if Bitcoin rises in price, it helps actually offset the liability, which is the deficit. So this is what Brandon and we were just talking about. But it's interesting to see this coming out of Tom and see this coming out of potential conversations in the Trump campaign, because there is a real thing. Like, no, it's not about wiping out the deficit, right? It's not about like they're going to buy Bitcoin and pump Bitcoin. The deficit's going to go to zero, right? That's not the thing. If they could reduce the deficit 20% though, or 10%, or 5%, those are massive numbers that completely change some of these calculations. That's the thing. Even if this just buys some breathing room, the US gets serious about owning assets as a nation, which other nations do. Let's be clear. Saudi Arabia does that. Singapore does this. Strategic wealth funds are real. For some reason, the US has not done that. If we embrace that, that does help the situation, and Bitcoin can be a part of that story.
Absolutely. That's well said. The position in Trump's administration that will have the most impact on the eventual or whether or not a strategic reserve happens and how it gets rolled out is the Treasury Secretary. Matt Hines, we got a video of this candidate Scott Besant as well. Take a look at it. But Matthew Hines is stating that he thinks with Bitcoin, everything is on the table. It's going to be one of the most exciting things about Bitcoin is for a generation of investors who post a great financial crisis, have been looking for investment opportunities and soured on the markets. So let's take a quick look at this video. I haven't even watched this yet all the way through. Let's see, where'd the where'd the window go? Is it this one? Well, I'm gonna have to find it. So let's move along. I'll come back to it. Literally missing a window here. Okay, let's see. Let's talk about Fed rates, and then after that we'll go to MicroStrategy. So John, I'll let you take this one.
Yeah, for sure. So
we'll do this, then we'll do ETFs, and I'm gonna find this this clip.
Okay, cool. Yeah, basically we just wanted to hit on it because there was a Fed meeting yesterday. These are historically big things. We don't want to come across as like these obsessive TradFi people of like, oh my God, the Fed talked about this and they cut rates by 25 basis points and it's huge. But there was a meeting yesterday. They did cut by 25 basis points. That was very telegraphed. Right now, what you're seeing on the screen is the target rate probabilities for the next meeting, which is the final one of the year, and it's December 18th. Right now, it's about 65%, 35%, 65% that they cut another 25 basis points, 35% that they keep rates where they are now. They're going to be watching a bunch of different things. They're going to be watching, what do treasury yields kind of do further out the curve, which is a little bit more market-based. The Fed controls more of the front end of the curve. So far, since Trump got elected, those rates have gone up. I think that's people generally thinking it's going to be like a pro-growth agenda, which is going to have some inflation associated with it. So we'll see what happens there. Also, just more like entertaining than anything, but there was some contentious dialogue because Fed, kind of reporters who cover the Fed were basically saying to Powell, hey, what are you going to do if Trump tries to get rid of you? And you could tell Powell was like pretty pissed to even have to deal with the conversation. And he was just like, it's not permitted under the law. When they were asking him, if Trump wants to get rid of you, will you step down? And at first he just goes, no. And then the reporter's like, can you elaborate on that? And he's like, it's not permitted under the law. And I haven't looked into this, but it is kind of interesting and odd that a president could appoint a Fed chair, but then it's like you can't get rid of them. They're like protected by something. I don't know. There's probably some legal nuances that I assume Powell is aware of just because he's kind of a sharp guy and he has a legal background. So there will be drama to follow as to whether or not Powell is the Fed chair. But just like a TLDR on rate cuts. Go ahead, Brady.
Yeah, that clip was crazy. I should have pulled it up, but he was just like, no.
Yeah. It was just like it's more like drama to follow than anything. But yeah,
he asserted that he doesn't have to step down if Trump wants to replace him. Does anybody know if that's true? I meant to follow up on that, but
it's basically true. No, he's basically correct. Congress could do it, but Trump, on paper, the president cannot do it.
Which makes sense.
Yeah. And it's reasonable, but I think there are ways to get him out. And there's certainly there's many ways to overhaul a system, man. I mean, that's just the kind of by the books way to do it. But there's obviously ways to put pressure on things.
I interrupted you.
No, all good. And I guess the logic there would be the president appoints, Congress then approves. So they don't want the president to just willy-nilly being like, you're out, you're fired. They watched The Apprentice and they were like, we can't have this happening. TLDR for me is like the reason I'm not obsessed with rate cuts is because number one, these are just like 25 basis point moves. It's much more so the trend of interest rate policy that's important. But even aside from that, such unique things have happened in the last few years with mortgage rates going to like 2.5%. So many people borrowed and then they're staying in their home. So mortgage rates going up to 7 doesn't have that much of an impact at an aggregate level For the people who just graduated college and mortgage rates go to 7, that absolutely sucks for them. I want to make that clear. But at like an aggregate level, a lot of people locked in 2.5%, 3%. So rates going up is not like a dire thing at an aggregate level. Same thing with corporations. They borrowed a ton. Same thing with governments, even to a certain extent, they borrowed a ton. So the rates going up isn't having like as big of an effect as maybe we think it does. But anyway, and same thing to the other side, like them cutting by 50 to 100 basis points. It's not going to be like some giant market moving event. So that's just a little bit of color on rate hikes. You get to follow the drama with Powell, and next Fed meeting is December 18th.
All right.
So I think what you see is I think Trump really pushes to get rates down. I think he really does, and I think he's able to do it. And I think the smart move is you combine energy deregulation and corporate deregulation with rate cuts, and it's a way you get more liquidity into the system. You improve kind of profile for consumers, but you also keep inflation under control by like aggressively deregulating energy production. I think that's the sweet spot. It's threading a needle, but it's possible. So it'll be interesting to see, how it plays out, because, if you can drive the price of oil down to $50 a barrel, you're in a much better place with CPI. We can't hear you, Brady.
All right. While Brady sorts out his audio, quick thoughts on Powell. Number one, it is a very good thing that the president cannot appoint the Fed chairman, right? Let's be honest. That's good. My strong hope is that the Trump administration does not do any like overstepping the rules changes. And we want to build a resilient system for hundreds and hundreds of years. And that requires distributing power, just as an American principle. Separate to that is, let's say Trump wants him gone and Powell's kind of hanging around, is not really playing ball. What do you think Trump's going to do? He's going to make fun of him on the internet every day. He's going to come up with a new name. Oh, it's low energy Jerome. He can barely stay awake in his meetings. Whatever. He's going to come up with a name and he's going to brand it. It's going to be all over the internet. And eventually Jerome will step down.
Yeah. Okay. You guys just now told me that my mic was not right after 45 minutes. I feel bad. Sorry, everyone. I have this nice mic that I've been talking into the whole time, and I was not even on it. So
shout out Debbie for the call out.
Thanks, Debbie. Appreciate you. Okay, Steven, this is your thing.
Let's go.
And pull it up.
So
yeah, okay, this is it.
Yeah, so this is we're talking about for Treasury Secretary, right? We got Bessent. He is currently being floated. Now, when I was reading about Bessent, who's maybe going to come into an important role in the Trump administration, I saw this little note at the bottom of Wikipedia, and that in a second Trump administration, he proposed a 3-point economic plan for Trump modeled on Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe's 3 arrows. Now, I don't know if you guys have been on the internet much. You have. But there's been these Trump and Shinzo Abe memes, which have been phenomenal. This was the Prime Minister of Japan. He was shot. Like he was shot previously, and they had a friendship, and they were well known to have like a close friendship. So it's fun. It's funny to see this after everything that's been going on. But yeah, the internet's been having a field day with Shinzo.
That's hilarious. I found this clip. Here's Scott Besnett. This was a week before.
He's
Nashville.
reportedly planning to announce making Bitcoin a strategic reserve asset, a major shift in the government's approach to crypto. The Treasury would buy and hold billions in Bitcoin like it does for gold or foreign currencies. Scott, I want to get your take on that.
Caribbean, look, the multimedia marketplace.
I've been excited about the president's embrace of crypto. And I think it fits very well with the Republican Party, the ethos of crypto's about freedom. And the crypto economy is here to stay. The Democrats are running from it because they're trying to wash off the stench of Sam Bankman-Fried and his family's donations to the Democratic Party. So they're willing to take down a whole industry because of bad behavior on their part, bad behavior on one actor. And Yeah,
the
I
multimedia
think
marketplace.
that everything's on the table with Bitcoin. And to me, one of the most exciting things about Bitcoin is for a generation of investors who
multimedia
maybe
marketplace.
Post the great financial crisis have been looking for investment opportunities, or maybe they'd soured on markets. Crypto is bringing in young people. It's bringing in the people who haven't participated in markets, and having a market culture in the U.S. and people believing that markets work for them is a centerpiece of capitalism.
Yeah, it's massive. I mean, it's hard to overestimate. I mean, it's a profound realignment. There they are. It's you got to look at some of these, man. The Shinzo memes are hilarious, but the realignment. I mean, that was an amazing clip of just like they're gonna take this stance. Like this is good. I really do not think this was a passing fad on the campaign trail. I think this was a substantial thing that is going to be embraced by the party and by the Trump administration. I mean, you see it from all angles. They're still talking about it. Your red flag would be he gets elected and they completely stop talking about it.
Exactly. John, let's look at the ETFs real quick.
Sure.
All right. Historic inflows right after the election, actually on the same day and then after as well.
Yeah, for sure. And I think this is just like another drop in the bucket of things that TradFi people like to see in these funds, these ETFs, that shows legitimacy, that shows staying power. And it's things like flows, it's total assets that are in them, performance, trading volume, do options exist on them, which I think is coming in Q1. Actually, I saw Dante ask the question to Eric Balchunas or was James Seyfert. Those two guys are like the same person to me. Sorry to both of them, but they're just like Bloomberg TradFi guys who cover the ETFs. And I see a tweet from one of them, and I can't remember who it actually was, but one of them said that he thinks the options on Bitcoin ETFs are coming in the first quarter of 2025. So all those things I just listed, these are basically things that show more legitimacy to the asset class. So yeah, I think it's just like this, another brick in the wall that TradFi people are going to be like, this is getting harder and harder to ignore. So yeah, and it's fun to watch the amount of Bitcoin that's going to go in those ETFs. I think that there's going to be a ton of people in the next 12 months who have never had any exposure to Bitcoin in their lives, and they're going to get it through the ETFs. And some amount of time later, they're going to go down the Bitcoin rabbit hole in all the various ways that they do that. And they're eventually going to say, oh, this is way cooler than just a ticker in my brokerage account. And I would like to own some real Bitcoin in my own custody. So I just like Corey at Swan calls it the best top of funnel possible for real Bitcoin holders. And that's what it is. So I'm genuinely excited when I see the Bitcoin ETFs doing well. It's like GBTC brought in a lot of people to Bitcoin, but there were a lot of downsides to GBTC. People getting brought into Bitcoin through these ETFs is way, way better for Bitcoin.
Yeah, it's huge. I mean, the success of these ETFs is at record levels. I mean, you've rarely seen a product that has been this successful. You've rarely seen an ETF launch that has been this successful. And it's going to be a huge part of, I think, like, okay, let's put it like this. We have never had a bull market where easy to access Bitcoin products were in everyone's brokerage account. Never. This will be the first time where we get into the actual real meat of the bull market, and anybody in the country can just log into Fidelity. I would say they could log on to Vanguard, except those idiots block the ETFs. So major L for Vanguard, but they can log into most brokerage accounts and they can just hit buy. We have never had anything like that. It was hard to buy Bitcoin before. It really was. You had to go into a completely new world, set up your two-factor authorization, what's Coinbase, blah, blah, blah. the on-ramps are 100x wider, and it's going to be very interesting to see how that plays out.
One addendum to that. Do you guys remember in 2017 when you could sell your Binance login for like $10,000 because the ICO gains were so high and the KYC lines were so slow?
Yeah. I mean, it was crazy.
I did not know that. That's an insane fact right there.
Oh yeah. I may or may not have kept a portfolio of logins for shitcoin casinos after that, waiting for the next cycle, and never happened.
Hindsight's 2020, quit him.
That's right.
Bitcoin critics. I think we're good, right? We've been through everything. I know Steven's got to go sling some corn. So I think we can wrap it up there.
We're already past 3 p.m. This seriously flew by.
That went really fast. Yeah, we're at almost now. We did start late. Sorry about starting late, guys. We'll be better about this. So every Friday, same time, 11 a.m. PT, 2 p.m. ET, me and the boys here will be talking Bitcoin on Swan Signal Live. So come and join us. Thanks to Marathon for helping support the show. Check out the Swan app. In fact, let me see if I can pull up. Yeah, I'm going to play this little ad from the Tuttle Twins. So check out the Swan app. Search Swan Bitcoin in the App Store. It's the perfect orange pilling app. Literally like 2 or 3 minutes to go from zero to your friend or family member's first sats. And then we'll take it from there to help you out with education, IRAs, multi-sig custody, collaborative custody, etc. So thanks, everyone. And we will see you next Friday for another session. Thanks, guys.
See you.
Peace out.
With parental permission.
I meant actually, how do I buy some Bitcoin? Why does it say incoming unskippable ad?
One easy way to buy Bitcoin is with Swan, a Bitcoin-only app with no fees on your first $10,000. Quick, parents! Scan the QR code, download the app, and exchange your controlled money for uncontrolled money today! Sponsored by Swan. And we'd like to thank our second sponsor, Crema Bunion Cream. Derek!
If you all haven't seen that new episode of the Tuttle Twins, check it out. There's 2 Bitcoin episodes. It's an animated kids education show, but it's also one of those cartoons that's fun to watch for adults. So check that out. It's a good time. All right, guys, we're signing off.